Okay, we're now going to look at the second column, the movement of chemicals across the membrane. Okay, so the purpose of movement, we've basically got two types of transport, one passive and one active transport. Now, passive transport doesn't require any ATP or no energy. We've got diffusion, osmosis, and facilitated transport or facilitated diffusion. So these are basically when we have small and uncharged particles that can easily move their way across the plasma membrane. Active transport is the opposite to passive transport, and that energy is required in the form of ATP. We can pump hydrogen, sodium and potassium with their specialized protein pumps across the membrane because these are charged particles and they cannot easily diffuse across the membrane. Okay, so here's just to recap what we just said before. So passive moves straight across the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, no ATP is required. Now for active transport, we must use protein pumps. Okay, it's moving from an area of low to high concentration, so against the concentration gradient with active transport. Passive transport is down the concentration gradient. Okay, so there's two different types of active transport. We've got cytosis and, well, both of these are cytosis. So we've got the change in shape of membrane to form vesicles, and then we have the enzyme secretion as well. So pinocytosis. Okay, so factors affecting the rate are the concentration gradient relative to the inside and outside of the cell. Okay, the amount of particles there are really determines whether we're going to have active or passive transport. If the concentration inside the cell is going to be higher than the outside of the cell, then we're going to have a transport of materials, okay, and it may change in different environments. Okay, so the fluid mosaic model, we need to know about that one and what the membranes are made up of. Okay, so we can see we've got the hydrophilic heads here that like water, and then the hydrophobic fatty acid tails here. Okay, hydrophobic means that they don't like, or they are scared of water. That's the reason why the tails are actually in the middle of the membrane itself. Overall, we call this a phospholipid bilayer. Okay, one other point here is that the surface area to volume ratio affects the efficiency of transport and limits cell size. So cells are small for a reason, and that's because the diffusion pathway is a lot shorter in very small cells compared to large cells. It means that molecules can easily be moved in and out of the cell across the membrane quite easily. Okay, so we've got two diagrams here just to illustrate passive and active transport. We've got diffusion on the left. Okay, we can see we have got particles moving from a high concentration to a low concentration. That is down the concentration gradient. And then we've got facilitated diffusion here. Okay, these ones require specific proteins for it to move through the membrane. We've also got the active transport. We can see that ATP is required here, okay, and that gives the go-ahead for the molecules, as we see here, to move across the membrane against the concentration gradient. And here is just a plasma membrane with the other components, like the glycolipids, glycoprotein, carbohydrates, cholesterol, integral proteins,